Henry Ford is the founder of one of the world's most important companies today, the Ford Motor Company. He started off wanting to make automobiles as a hobby, like other young men during that time period, but it later became his ambition. His goal was to produce cars in large enough numbers to make them available to everyone. Through his company, he earned his title as the man who put the world on wheels. He was born July 30th, 1863 in Greenfield Township, Michigan, to William Ford and Mary Ford. He spent majority of his childhood on the farm his family owned. His mother's death in 1876 left him devastated. He left home in 1879 to work as an apprentice. His father wanted him to take over the farm, but he didn't. He later wrote in his autobiography, "I never had any particular love for the farm. It was the mother on the farm that I loved." Henry Ford married Clara Bryant in 1888 and they had one child, Ethel Ford, in 1893. On June 16, 1903, the Ford Motor Company was incorporated. The company started in a small wagon factory in Detroit. The company sold their first car, Model A, on July 23, 1903. Within a year, they sold 1,700 Model A's and earned a profit of $37,000. In 1904, the Ford Motor Company decided to branch out and the Ford of Canada was founded. The first plant was built in Walkersville, Ontario, now Windsor, and was right across Ford's existing plant in Detroit. This gave the Ford Motor Company an international status. The Ford of Canada was created as a separate company and had its own shareholders. In 1917, Henry Ford decided to quickly expand his companies overseas, and by 1932, they had lots of branches in other countries like Britain, Australia, Argentina, Brazil, Canada, India, South Africa, Mexico, Philippines, and Germany. Through his company, Henry Ford has achieved some great and some not so great accomplishments. Henry Ford's most famous car was the Model T, nicknamed the Tin Lizzie. It's famously known as the car that put the world on wheels. It was created in 1908 and was a very affordable vehicle. The Ford Motor Company sold around 15 million Model Ts before they stopped producing them in 1927. It was a very simple and easy to maintain vehicle, which was good because people around that time were just getting used to the idea of cars. The assembly line is one of Henry Ford's most important contributions and it helped change the manufacturing industry forever. The assembly line is still used by all manufacturing companies today. Despite popular belief, Henry Ford did not actually create the first assembly line, but he did help refine and perfect the idea. He also added moving conveyor belts to help move the parts. The idea was for each employee to stay in place and perform the same tasks repeatedly on all vehicles that passed by. Henry Ford listed many benefits of the assembly line in his autobiography. Some of them were that workers do not have to lift heavy items, there's no need to bend over, there's no special training required, it creates jobs that almost anyone can do, and it provides employment to immigrants. With the moving assembly line, each worker had one specific job, which helped the process of building an automobile faster and more efficient. This helped the company because the demand for cars grew very fast. The company soon passed the production levels of all their competitors and in turn made their vehicles more affordable. This also changed the way the cars looked because colors were no longer a choice for customers. Henry Ford said, "Any customer can have a car painted any color he wants so long as it's black," because only Japan Black ink dried quick enough for assembly lines to use. Color was not used again until 1926. Soon, a Model T that was usually made in 12.5 hours could be made in 2 hours and 40 minutes and eventually 1 hour and 30 minutes. By 1920, the production of Ford automobiles were 1 million a year. By 1920, half of all the cars in the US were Model Ts. The assembly line transformed the industry very quickly and companies that did not have assembly lines risked bankruptcy. The 200 US car companies in 1920 shrank down to 17 in 1940. Another thing Henry Ford is credited for is his $5 a day idea. Ford's success of the assembly line helped create the production of automobiles and the company gained a lot of profit. Because of this, the company decided to increase the minimum wage for workers from $2.34 a day to $5 a day and cut shift lengths from 9 hours to 8 hours. He also hired disabled people and injured war veterans from the Great Wars that could not get jobs in other companies, and he was the first company to start doing so. This wage increase was designed to make automobiles affordable and accessible to the common man and help his workers purchase the items they create. With this pay, the workers could afford to buy a Model T with about 4 months' pay. The $5 a day idea helped create the middle class in the US. These practices by Henry Ford were called Fordism. His generosity was reported by many newspapers. His offer to pay $5 a day attracted thousands of immigrants and African Americans who wanted to earn twice the normal wage. This helped people of different cultures and heritage work at Ford and created diversity in the company. By 1914, Ford employees were the highest paid workers in the world. Although Henry Ford has a reputation as a great man who is generous towards his employees, there have been a lot of criticism for both him and his company. Henry Ford has gotten criticized for stopping his son from fully taking over the company. After he retired in 1918, he continued to play a major role in the decision-making of the company and did not listen to Ezra Ford. Many people saw his son as a better leader who could have made the company more successful. Henry Ford was also anti-Semitic and kept a close association with the Nazi government in Germany. The newspaper Henry Ford used to publish, the Dearborn Independent, included a section called The International Jew, which had information that made it look like he agreed with the Nazis' view on Jewish people. Henry Ford was the only American mentioned by name in Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, and it is rumored that Hitler had a picture of Henry Ford in his office. Hitler had been quoted to have said, "I regard Henry Ford as my inspiration." On July 1938, Ford received the Grand Cross of the German Eagle Medal, and many people questioned why. One of the Ford Motor Company's worst moments was the Ford Hunger March on March 7, 1932. It was organized by Detroit's Unemployed Council during the Great Depression. 3,000 to 5,000 unemployed workers got together around the River Rouge complex and petitioned for more support from the company. 5 men were killed during it and 60 were badly injured. Even though he did not physically harm the people, he still got a lot of blame for it. Despite all of this, Henry Ford is still a very important man. Henry Ford is responsible for creating a manufacturing technique still used by the world today, the moving assembly line, which changed the way manufacturing was done. He also helped create the middle class and made cars accessible to the common man with his Model T, which had a lasting impact on the lifestyles of people. He led his company from a small and insignificant company to an important international corporation that has been running successfully for over 100 years and has managed to overcome many economical struggles like the Great Depression and the auto industry crisis of 2008. Henry Ford is one of the most important industrialists in American history.